hear that, Tom? You feel that? That is the Soccerwise anthem, baby. We are back for another huge week of coverage in North America. 3 finals. Read them. 1, 2, 3, maybe 2. Maybe not counting Campion Cup. That's going to be a debatable point we will get to in this show coming up this week, and we are excited to cover it. We're excited to break it all down. Tom, I am stoked because I've got Soccerwise on my screen. I got the Soccerwise anthem in my ears, and I've got a Soccerwise t-shirt on right now for the first time in my life, and it feels like heaven.
It's a beautiful shirt. I'd love to see it and feel it and have it on myself too, but I guess mine got lost in the mail. Do I need to subscribe to Soccerwise MVP level to get one?
You would, and anyone who already did subscribe to the MVP level is receiving them in the mail. It is happening currently. Charlie Fiction, aka Charlie Cheesesteak, our lord behind the scenes, is getting those out. Exactly. Attempted to meet up with Tom in person yesterday to hand his over. Made huge efforts. Tom did not reciprocate, and then came on this show and starts by complaining that he doesn't have his shirt in hand.
I completely rejected it out of hand. I was like, my dude, I don't think it's gonna work here.
But he really wishes he had his, and it must have gotten lost in the mail. It feels amazing. It looks amazing. We are going to work on getting a store set up so we can start selling them out to everyone who wants to be able to rep Soccerwise, and everyone who has been messaging us. We appreciate all the love and all the support, and we're having so much fun doing this show. Changed this week as I readjusted the Monday show to make it a tight weekend recap that I can get to you all a little bit quicker, just to give you the rundowns of where everything sits, especially with the playoff runs and the Shield race a little bit, not really in NWSL and MLS anymore, and all those other things going on. So that's what that show is going to be. And then we're going to move to a mailbag episode on Friday that will be linked with an interview. So I already talked to the sporting director of the Orlando Pride, working on a second interview to tag in there as well, maybe more from the MLS side. And we'll continue to do that show coming forward. I already have some really exciting guests that I'm pumped to just chat soccer, not always weekend preview, just, getting in the soccer minds and talking and hanging out and doing all the things that Tom does on a regular basis, because it is a Tuesday in September. Nothing going on. That does not mean the ice cream shop can't be open. We, of course, will break down the weekend as we do every week with our setup, best matches, biggest wins, all that type of stuff. We are going to talk about some of the teams we're most interested in the playoff race. We will preview the US Open Cup final and the Canadian Championship final, of course. We will talk Campion Cup as well. But, Tom, you had a little breaking news to start the week for us and to start the show.
Yeah, let's just get right into it. The San Jose Earthquakes have interviewed at least 4 external candidates for their vacant head coaching role. Greg Berhalter, Bruce Arena, Gio Savarese, and Robin Fraser, sources told me. Interim head coach Ian Russell is also in consideration for their job. And that's kind of the dominoes are starting to fall on the coaching searches. You look at teams like San Jose, Atlanta, and we're going to get to Atlanta in a second. There are several teams without a head coach, Dallas, St. Louis as well, and maybe there's going to be more as the season gets closer to an end. One thing that I'm super interested in is, like, some of these candidates, in particular, like Gio Savarese, Robin Fraser, Berhalter, Bruce, like, all of them would be in the mix at other places too. Yeah. So what I'm super interested in is down this stretch here and the October international window. Like, is that a time where there's going to be a lot of teams trying to, hey, if we get our candidate right now, let's get that deal done so Chicago doesn't offer anything, or Atlanta, or St. Louis, or whatever, right? Like, so even beyond the names that we're going to dive into here in a second, like, that timeline is something I'm super interested in, and who's going to be the first to kind of pull the trigger in this kind of next group of teams. I know that Nashville already named BJ Callahan after firing Gary Smith early in the season, but of the group of coaching vacancies that are out right now, who's going to be the first to pull the trigger and get a deal done?
Let me add to that. If you have a coach that you're not sure on and you thought you were going to have your search this offseason and one of those names was the name you were hoping to get in the door, do you rush your process? And we've got an Austin FC fan already in the chat. They are one of those teams. Toronto, I think, is one of those teams. We've talked.
I would strongly. I don't think that Herdman's going anywhere after you. This has been a positive year for Toronto. Like, I don't know what you're thinking.
I don't know about the positive year part. I think the
they
part
were
is
supposed to finish dead last in East.
I understand that. I get your point. They probably won't make the playoffs. If they lose the Canadian Championship this week, they will be a non-playoff team that didn't win anything and are not in CONCACAF once again. It will be better than the bottom barrel was. I think the thing going for Herdman is that there is no real decision maker for Maple Leaf Sports, which is becoming Rogers. Like, everything is changing there. And with Bill Manning out and not having been replaced, I don't know that there's a decision maker who says, yeah, let's kickstart and let's turbocharge this thing with someone else. So I think you're right. Herdman's probably safe in the long run there. But I think there's a few of these where you wouldn't be surprised if the person came back, but you also wouldn't be surprised if there was an opening. And if they are thinking Robin Fraser or Gio Savarese or Greg Berhalter is the name that they thought, I think Berhalter probably the least, because you have to assume he's interviewing with Chicago and Atlanta. And if that's the race you want to get in, then you already would have had to make your move. But some of these other names start to say, and Bobby Warshaw walked us through it around the Mikey Vars thing, there's X amount of options and you go through them and you get there. So let me ask you this question. On San Jose, is this due diligence and everyone talks to everyone, or is this maybe, do you think, the real list of names that they're going to pull from?
Real list of names. Like, these are all interviews that have happened already and conversations that are ongoing. I'm going to be careful about, I guess, some of the details. Obviously, all these situations are fluid, and you could talk to four people and get four different opinions, and that could even be within the same organization or not. So all I know is 100% factually, all of these candidates have been interviewed.
Yeah. So San Jose, of course, letting Luchi Gonzalez go. Ian Russell has operated as their interim manager over the course of this season. There was a very small bump, right? Around a few weeks into Ian Russell's time. Otherwise, it has been a really down season for San Jose. I think they've unearthed the real DP in Hernan Lopez. We made Christian Espinoza the DP and captain of our underrated team. There are building blocks there. There are some pieces. The reality for San Jose, where they sit in terms of spending in MLS, has been pretty strong. What's interesting for me is a lot of these names don't really fit that MO. When you talk about Major League Soccer right now, and you say, a Gio Savarese or a Greg Berhalter, you would think that those coaches have weight and have histories for Gio Savarese of being with clubs that have spent pretty big at DP numbers. For Greg, with his background from USMNT, you'd think he would have the options to go to a club that would do that. And so if any of these candidates are serious about San Jose, I think that's exciting from the outside in saying they're pitching a project to these people who have been around this league who are convinced. So either they're pitching some higher level of spending or investment or some structure that interests all of these people. We don't know if any of them will actually take it, and we don't know what the final offers will look like. But I think if you're a San Jose fan or if you're watching from the outside, that's the most exciting part of this list of names. Is this is probably a playing field you wouldn't have expected San Jose to be in a few months ago.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was surprised when I heard Bruce Arena. I was surprised. I had heard Greg Berhalter's name like even as recently as a week ago, right? Like, and I was just like, yeah, right. Like, so either you got bad information or you're just messing with me. But yeah, so I think that's a positive for San Jose. And Goss, of those 5 names, is there any that sticks out to you as like, obviously, like if you were running this out of those 5, this would be my top choice. This would be my recommendation if they asked.
Yeah, I would say Greg Berhalter. I would be surprised if a few of these names ended up actually being the coach. I don't know.
Because you only have one coach at a time, unless that you wanted a few at a time.
I don't know what the reality is around hiring Bruce Arena in Major League Soccer right now with the way he left New England. Clearly, he's getting interviews. We've heard him connected, I believe, to DC United in the past as well.
He put his name forward to DC United. That was the connection.
So in here, San Jose now takes another step in actually interviewing him as a candidate. We've heard that he would, apply to Major League Soccer for clearance to be able to be hired. All of that. It seems like a lot to go through. Now, he was successful at New England, and I think some of the model of how he was successful at New England could carry over here. I like the soccer Robin Fraser plays. I think there was signs of it in Colorado. I don't think it fit Colorado, a.k.a. at altitude, and with the team they set up really well. I think Greg's the best coach of this group, but I would be shocked if he wants to coach in Major League Soccer if it's not in Chicago or Atlanta, and it ends up being in San Jose. And I've always liked Gio Savarese as a coach. it would be an interesting fit here in San Jose. He's not a coach who's played young players. And I think San Jose's path forward has to be their academy. It has to be the reality that Northern California is a soccer hotbed and that there is more talent there that is an ability for San Jose to get level with other people in the league who maybe are spending more at the first team level. All of that brings me back to, I think Robin Fraser would be the guy, if I was San Jose of this group, that I would hire.
Interesting. For me, I would lean with Bruce Arena, honestly. I know that he's, 73 now? I know that there's been a cloud of uncertainty about how he left the New England Revolution. I do believe he's already reinstated. Like, I'm fairly certain that process happened in the winter, or at least it's been assured to me that that's not an issue or going to be an issue. But look what he did for New England. New England were really, really good under him. They did not spend big before him. They did not spend medium. They spent, they barely got Carlos Hill across the line at $2 million, which was an awesome signing in retrospect. But, then Gustavo Bo came in for, what was that, 7 or 8?
And it was the week Bruce Arena started, basically.
Yeah, and so, that was part of his interview process. I'm only taking this job if you can guarantee the money. One source that was not connected with San Jose, so again, take this with a grain of salt. When I was yeah, right, Greg wouldn't take that job. And then it was Bruce, and it was, somebody said with Greg, it was apparently they've assured him they will raise the level of spend. And even looking at that, they did spend $6 million on Hernan Lopez. And look, I am not in any way letting ownership off the hook here because ownership has been a disaster, John Fisher, with this group, with this club. I want to say that on the front end. This is not a defense of John Fisher and ownership. But I will say, they did spend $6 million in April for a team that was already dead last, and you could talk yourself into hope that maybe that was going to, his team was very clearly among the very worst in MLS. So if they wanted to go as cheap as possible, which again, they have done plenty in the past, not letting them off the hook for that, but they could have delayed or deferred. Maybe this summer, maybe next year. And maybe they wouldn't have spent $6 million. Maybe it would have, Diogo Gonçalves. We have been saying that's a very good signing, we thought, for Real Salt Lake. That was only $3 million. So the Philadelphia Union, $6 million would be more than double their current record fee. And again, they're not a big spending team, right? But it's not as if they are so far below the spending level that it's why bother? They don't really have, this is a joke. There is at least a little bit of money there, I think. And the fact that they're talking to Bruce, the fact that they're talking to Greg, I don't think those two guys take these interviews without, on the front end, are there assurances that there will be money to spend for us to be good. Look, again, so going back to Bruce and why he would be my pick for this specific club, he got New England to go from a joke in terms of that regard and spend and transfer fees. They won a shield under him, and the year that he was placed on administrative leave, they were top 3 in the East. The ability for Bruce to, again, change the mind of ownership and his cachet to get them to spend more is hugely important. His ability to reach your best players, and your best players really are hitting their top potential, is something San Jose would need as well. What could Christian Espinoza be under Bruce Arena? Who knows? And, he has brought along young players more and more recently after the Galacticos LA Galaxy days. Even just with New England, Noel Buck kind of came through. I know Esmir Bartevich wasn't in the first team, I don't believe, by the time that he got canned, or he wasn't at least a regular, right? But his pathway into the first team was under Bruce Arena and what New England had done at large. So I think if Bruce comes in and says, I want to utilize the academy, but if he gets them to spend more money, I think that's a good fit.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the big thing that stands out to me is look at the other sports those two owners own, though, right? Look at the Crafts as sports owners and look at John Fisher as a sports owner.
Fair. Totally
and I think that's where I don't think Bruce Arena and Greg Berhalter are coming to this job interview at the same level. I think Greg Berhalter right now is coming from a position of strength of coming off the national team, an interesting coach who has success in MLS. Bruce Arena is not the same. So what you're saying about Bruce wouldn't take the job and wouldn't do it unless he has his guarantees, 5 years ago, I would agree with you. I don't know that I agree with that 100% right now.
Yep.
Now, he did some really good stuff with the Revs. Like you said, he changed their reality. They were not a modern MLS club when he took them over, right? He helped rebuild the academy, or build it. Sorry, you can't rebuild something that never existed. And so, as you said, all those names, Noel Buck coming through, Paniatu, Esmir Bartevich, now we see Peyton Miller, all these players.
Yeah.
A lot of them were recruited players that Bruce Arena got money spending into the academy, and New England went out and recruited older options, a lot of them pushing into the U19 team to say, how do we jumpstart things as we rebuild things from the bottom? San Jose's done a lot of that. San Jose has done that without money, though.
Yes.
What's frustrating about San Jose, and you can talk about the spend on Hernan Lopez, is even when they said we want to be an academy-based team, we want to be a young team, they have not spent at the level that some of the higher academies have spent in one of the most soccer-rich, talent-rich areas, not just in the country, in the world. Like, you're talking about this massive population of players that can be game changers. You are talking about a club down the street in Sacramento Republic that any GA Cup you go to, every team has a guest player. And yet none of those players, or very few of those players, end up on this San Jose team. So there is way more of a gap there that San Jose has to get through. And again, I think it's promising that all of these coaches are in the process, which again shows okay, there's some level of commitment there. Mm-hmm. I don't know how big it is, and I don't know how deep it'll be.
Last point for me on this is that I understand kind of the thought process there, Berhalter, and I will say that I'm still assuming Berhalter's going to end up in Chicago, but again, he interviewed for San Jose, he has had his eyes on potentially Europe and stuff, right? So I still think this ends with him in Chicago.
Yeah.
But as of right now, he's a candidate that everybody should be trying to talk to at least.
Well, the two that I have said for Berhalter over and over again is Chicago or Atlanta. I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense, Tom, and I think you have an update here on Atlanta.
I do. I can confirm that Patrick Vieira is a finalist for the Atlanta United head coaching vacancy. I'm told that final interviews haven't started yet, but that's where the timeline is. That's where they're getting. So they're getting towards the end of this. I've had several people say he's the front runner. People have said, I believe this is going to happen, right? But all I can report right now with 100% certainty is he is a finalist. For me, this would make a ton of sense for both Vieira and Atlanta. So this is one of those, it's same thing with Berhalter in Chicago. It's this just makes sense, right? So that's kind of why it was easier to go down this path and figure it out. But Patrick Vieira is a finalist for the Atlanta United head coaching job.
Makes sense, right? It was a name we connected with the USM&T job. That's sort of even the stratosphere he's in, which is what you'd expect from Atlanta. One of the biggest spendings, highest profile teams, biggest average crowd. All these things is Atlanta needs to push things further than a normal MLS club. And I think Patrick Vieira is a coach like that. His success at NYCFC, knowledge of the league, willingness to understand the league, right? This is a guy who, coming off his time at Man City, made a trade his first draft to get Jack Harrison, to understand the process and to care about how it could work in Major League Soccer, and then went back and had ups and downs. Wasn't perfect in Ligue 1 or in the Premier League, but that's great experience to now bring back into this job. He is as big a name as there is in the world of soccer. He walks into a room with a big DP candidate. It's not Tata exactly if you're still shipping or you're still scouting in South America, but it's Patrick freaking Vieira. It's a big deal for him to walk into a room and he carries that gravitas. Also, I am the biggest Patrick Vieira fan. So I just self-edited so I don't have to go in and do it after. So I am stoked if he comes back into Major League Soccer. He also plays good soccer. He cares about it. He plays good soccer, and he plays to win. The only thing that stands out here is I don't know that he's someone that is in a position to ask for or you are going to make in charge of both the soccer sporting decisions and the coaching decisions.
Let me stop you right there. Garth Lagerwey has said on the record, several times, that is what we will not be doing. Somebody who has both titles, he has been extremely definitive about that. This will not be a role in which the head coach is also CSO or the head coach is technical director and Garth stays as CSO. Whatever it is, this is going to be a separate job. So I don't think that Vieira being a finalist would indicate to me that he understands that. Look, he comes from City Football Group, NYCFC, part of City Football. His last job was with Strasbourg, City Football Group, Chelsea, the Blue Co. I'm getting my conglomerates mixed up, and now I need to go edit that. But yeah, so it's not like he had control of those clubs. At Crystal Palace, there was a sporting director, right? So I don't think that that's what he's coming in for. And again, that he's a finalist, that tells me that he knows that he's good with that, right? Because Garth Lagerwey would have been direct and upfront about that in interviews, probably even more so than he is in interviews with the media, because that's all public, everything's on the record. I can imagine he's been even stronger in delivering that message in interviews.
So here's my one thing, though. I understand Garth is a CSO as president and is a soccer guy, but you're hiring a coach without having the CSO do it. And that's the backwards way to do this. That's my only concern for Atlanta here is I think Patrick Vieira is a home run option. And I think Garth is the one who's broad picture setting the direction from a soccer point of view. But that needs to trickle down now through a CSO who's going to work well with Patrick Vieira, if that's who you hire, before you've hired the CSO. And that just makes, I think, it a little bit harder to put it together all correctly. But this is the advantage of having someone like Garth be your president.
So I would liken this to the Alexei Miranchuk discussions that we've had.
Right.
Like, yes, it's probably not like with at that point signing him without a head coach, and very, very clearly Carlos Bocanegra was not long term for this job. It was whether he was going to get fired now or at the end of the season, right? Like, so it was pretty clear that there was going to be new leadership in the front office and obviously on the coaching staff. And you spent $13 million to sign a player. Alexei Miranchuk, like, he should be able to be fit under any manager. Patrick Vieira is a guy that, like, let's say that Chris Henderson or insert any other technical director that comes in. I feel like Patrick Vieira would be at the top of the list for a lot of these folks. So for me, like, I get that that's a worry, but this isn't going to be a situation where it's like a lame duck. Like, oh, he didn't get to bring his own guy in. It's like, dude, it's Patrick Vieira. Like, it kind of reminds me of like Garth in like MLS Cup 2019 with Seattle, like doing the interview rounds, and someone was like, how did you, something about Raul Ruiz signing. He goes, yeah, man, that was, I got to tell you, we did great, right? Like, we went and found the leading goal scorer in League MX. I don't know if anybody's ever thought of that or looked at it. And then he said he wanted to come to Seattle. So, like, dude, it was, we unearthed the diamond here, right? Like, just joking around, obviously. Like, that's the same thing with Vieira. A new technical director comes in and be like, wow, like, couldn't imagine that one, right? Like, this is just, I think, a no-brainer on all sides. And I don't see any friction with a potential new technical director coming.
Finished fourth and finished second his 2 years as manager of NYCFC. Remember, coming off the tire fire that was their expansion team with Jason Kreis playing at Yankee Stadium. All the crap that they've dealt with, and he set them on the course that Dome Turan and Ronnie Dyla upped the ante to. This would be a home run. This would be awesome, and it would be really fun to see. Anything else? Are we ready to get into our weekend recap?
Let's recap it up.
Let's jump into it. We start, of course, with our best match of the weekend in Major League Soccer. A few candidates for it this time here. Tom, you want to go first?
Let's just call this the Portland Timbers segment. This is the best match is the honorary 2024 Portland Timbers. Once again, Real Salt Lake 3, Portland Timbers 3. What an insane, unreal game. An incredible goal by Evander. We got Chicho Arango getting his first goal contribution post-injury. Gonçalves scores his first goal. The new Polish winger, who I'm struggling to remember his name at the second on top of my head, and the pronunciation. He scores his first MLS goal. There was the elite VAR explanation by Tori Penzo. The however, and waving her finger at the same time. That's the best moment of the weekend that came in this incredibly entertaining 3-3 match. And just once again, the Portland Timbers are in this discussion for, entertaining and best match. But, like, I think Phil Neville communicated this better than I've been either trying to hint or joke. Like, he had a direct quote, something to the effect of, like, this team is gonna, like, send me to my death. Like, yeah. He's like, yeah, and if so, I would die happy. Like, something to that effect. It was incredible. And, like, that's, like, I'm sure Phil Neville would have preferred a 1-0 Portland boring game. But what do you got? It's 3-3, man.
I talked to someone at Portland yesterday. I said, can you do me a favor and just keep doing ridiculous things and playing absurd games? And you guys will be right on track for the rest of the season, as you said. I believe it's pronounced Marchuk, yes. Dominic Marchuk, the young attacking winger. He, besides scoring, he has been very good. Yeah. I don't know how expansive his game will be as he figures it out. He does one thing, which is he puts his head down and he goes and he attacks. It's a good way to come into a league to be able to just have the one thing you've perfected. And it was a lot of what Andres Gomez gave this team as well, because Diego Luna is going to float in off the left side. He's going to try and connect and find the game. Chicho's going to drop a little deeper if he's in the game. Anderson Julio is going to stretch the field. There is a need for someone to do something predictable well that everyone else can operate off of, and that opens up the field. He's been really good. As you mentioned, you bring in a new DP signing to get him a goal late is really big as well. I think RSL will consider it points dropped in the end, but they still clinched a playoff spot. They are currently second in the Western Conference. Overall, I think it's fine. And, man, I better get a bouquet for my Evander MLS 2024 finalist shout from over a year ago. Tom, I want to walk into this apartment like it's Valentine's Day after our first wedding when I am pregnant with our first child. You better treat me like the king or queen that I am for this take. I don't want to be able to put a foot down without crushing a flower in this space. You understand me?
I desperately need somebody who can make a cartoon quickly digitally to bring that visual to life. I don't want to promise free shirts because I don't know if I'm in charge of that. But if we got one, we'll do something. That's all I can promise.
We can send you your shirt and you can send it out to people.
I hope you're large.
The Evander free kick it's just perfection, right? It's a lead. It's a moment of brilliance. We have the question from Dan Nye in the chat. How far can a Portland or Galaxy go without the ability to defend in a playoffs?
I don't care. I want to be along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the 3-game series. Who knows what's going to happen?
Bro, it was like Columbus Atlanta last year. How many goals were in those 3 games? It's nuts.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing I keep coming back to. Like, it's like if LAFC weren't so bad over the last 4 weeks or whatever it's been, they would pretty clearly be the favorites. Not necessarily because that they're better than everybody else. It's because they're the only team that I trust of the top 5 to like bunker down and win 1-0 and do it comfortably. Like LA Galaxy, they won again, gave up multiple goals again. Portland Timbers will do this every time. Salt Lake, Colorado kept a clean sheet for I don't know when the last time was, right? Like, that hasn't been their MO this season either. So if like LAFC could just get their crap together, I think that they'd be the pure favorites. So while I'm not entirely sure how sustainable this is through playoff rounds, the West is wide open from 1 to hell, maybe even 9 with Minnesota. I don't know if they would get out of the play-in game, but like Portland can, like if Portland would play LA Galaxy if whoever wins the play-in game, if the season ended right now, they would play the LA Galaxy. And in a 1-8 game that's supposed to be an overwhelming favorite, I cannot in good conscience say that the Galaxy would be overwhelming favorites over the Portland Timbers.
Yeah. At the same time, the Portland Timbers were eliminated by St. Louis in the round of 32 of the Leagues Cup 3-1 because they can't defend. It is not historically a successful way to go about an MLS playoffs. And what would be fascinating about Portland is like you assume they're going to try and shut up shop at some point if they're even capable of it. Like if all of the pieces that are in this team can close down space, stay in a block, keep their lines clean in the moments they would choose to in a postseason. Because at some point you're going to have to defend the lead, or at some point you're going to have to try and close the game down. It's been one of the things we're going to talk about SKC in the US Open Cup final. It's been one of the things they've struggled with over the last 10 years, even when they've been talented and dangerous and higher up in the standings. You said it's the Portland Timbers segment. The LA Galaxy have a shout in here. I think Columbus also has chosen to make a hold on their permanent seat in this space that they can come to week after week. Columbus, it looked like they were going to run away with this one against Orlando this week. Obviously rotated team because of Campeones Cup and midweek and fixture congestion and all of that. And they end up winning 4-3 against Orlando. So they were up, 3-0. Orlando made it 3-2. They scored again and then decided to concede another one to make it 4-3 for the second game in a row. Cucho comes off the bench. AZ Jackson got a goal in this one, was really good in this game as well. What did you make of this one? And Orlando, we questioned them. Did they show something in only losing 4-3?
No, because of the way that game went. It felt dead and gone. Like, I thought that had to do more with Columbus taking their foot off the gas than Orlando kind of storming back. Like, even when it was 3-2, I'm looking up the minutes now. It was like 6 minutes later, AZ Jackson made it 4-2 again or whatever, right? Like, when it was 3-2, sorry, to, extend it back to 2 goals. So, I don't think that lasted long. And, again, I think that has more to do with just a random end of the game. But, this is better than, obviously, losing 4-0, right? Like, that's an obvious take. I still think that they're distance between the top 3 and everybody else. Orlando, I think, are currently playing the best ball underneath that line. Philadelphia, who we're going to get to later, would have another shot for that as well, and they're 9th or 8th right now. And so I don't know. Yes, Orlando showed me that. I thought that they performed better than some of the other teams in that group would, but it was a bounce back week for some of those teams anyway.
Let's dig into those. We get our biggest win for playoff push that we do in this category, which was the win that affected their opportunity to make the playoffs the most. Philadelphia obviously 4-0 win. They jump over the entire pack right below the playoff line into ninth place for the week. They are tied with TFC. They are better on points per game because they have a game in hand on 36 points, so they could be the 8th place team.
The tiebreaker is wins.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying they're better on points per game because they've played less games.
Sorry. I thought my bad.
Yeah. So they're in ninth right now. They control their own destiny to get into 8th.
Yes.
And the way they're playing, they could get there. We are going to dig into them more coming up because I kind of went through part of their turnaround and what they've been able to accomplish.
Toronto in 8th, negative 17 goal difference. Philly in 9th, plus 10. Montreal in 10th, negative 20. One of these is not like the others.
Yeah, and Philly's XG is like right on line with that as well.
Top 5.
Yeah, it is. Everything they're doing makes no sense so far in Major League Soccer, and you're like, okay, cool. But now it's starting to fit in line a little bit. Minnesota, a huge 2-0 win against Sporting Kansas City. There was a 2.5-hour weather delay at halftime. SKC dominated Minnesota in the first half. They got to halftime. They basically had a whole new game. SKC dominated Minnesota for 20 minutes. Kelvin Yeboah scored a banger basically out of nowhere. SKC fell apart. Minnesota gets the 2-0 win. In the end, Bongi getting the second goal. And Minnesota right now, 5 points ahead on that playoff line. Colorado, by the way, clinched their playoff spot officially. They beat a rotated TFC squad. We'll talk about TFC coming up in the Canadian Championship that they're going to play in. But shout out to Colorado. Like we talked about it in Leagues Cup. The run they made already, you could say it was a good season. To clinch a playoff spot this early, to be in line for a home game, Chris Armas has to be in the Coach of the Year finalists at this point.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I'm gonna kind of dive into I'm writing something this week about where I stand on with my ballot, and again, I'm a huge proponent of unless something's a runaway, that huge proponent of I will not submit my ballot until after decision day, and the ballot closes the next day, so it's a little bit of a tight turnaround, but I think every data point, every performance, every game matters. And in the Coach of the Year race, that's absolutely there. I don't know if off the top of my head, I'd probably be leaning Armas right now because if Tata wins the Coach of the Year without setting a points record, I'm going to be really disappointed in that. The only argument I think he could have is if they set the points record, and even then, I still might lean Armas just because of the overwhelming amount of talent at Miami's disposal, even if you take away Lionel Messi, which is just a crazy sentence to say. Take away the best player of all time, and you still have one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in MLS. So, for me, the degree of difficulty here for Chris Armas, how quickly this turnaround has happened, I was saying it back in March, you could see 3, 4, 5 games in, oh, this is exactly how they want to play. This is exactly what they want to do. And it's hitting the ground immediately. There wasn't as big of a lag time between here are our principles, here are our ideas, here are our game model. We're going to take our lumps. Of course, that there were bad results early this season, the worst of which being down 4-0 to Portland in the first half of the first game. But it's pretty much after that, it was oh yeah, this is exactly what they wanted. This is how they want to play. This is their identity. They have the players to match, and it's much more likely than not that they'll at least be good, if not very good. And they've been very good.
Does it matter to you, do you think, for Chris, where in the standings they finish? They're third right now. LAFC in games in hand could jump them, but it's all really tight. There's a chance they finish 7th. Does that matter to you specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it does. Everything is contextual. Everything is nuanced. I'm not binary about all these things. I don't have rules where it's if this, then no. I mean, if you don't make the playoffs, that feels pretty obvious. But and for me, I trust Colorado to stay in the top 4 anyway. So it's not even something that I've considered too big.
Yeah, the Tata argument's going to be interesting. I think a large part of it's going to come down to how many games a lot of those players did miss and his ability to manage the roster, even though it is a ton of talent. We have Wilfred Nance shouts, of course, in the chat. He is going to be in that conversation as he deserves to be. You have to think Pablo Mastroeni is going to be in there, and Greg Vanney's probably going to be in there as well, especially if the Galaxy finish top of the Western Conference. It was a big bounce-back win for the Galaxy this weekend, coming off that midweek loss for them. But I think some other bigger bounce-back wins in this category. FC Dallas, 3-1 win over LAFC. I gave them a shot on Thursday. You said no. They are in, baby. They are ready for the race. There's no way they're going to make the playoffs, but they were fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, that's a big jump up. That makes me happy.
That's the W.
Honest to God, yeah. Like, Jesus Ferreira looked really good. Like, this, again, like, I've been saying it for 2 years and in different iterations of this team, and this is why I was so dismissive of this conversation when we had it before. It's like, I'm sick of talking about what this team might be in theory.
Yeah.
And they put it on the field. They put tape on the board of what this team could look like when things are right. Like, Peter Musa is one of the best forwards in the league. It's been quiet because he got off to a little bit of a slow start at the beginning of the year, and then obviously Dallas kind of seeped towards irrelevance with the coaching change and all the kind of disappointments and all the injuries. But like right now, like dude, he's one of the best forwards in the league, and all these building blocks moving forward to next year. If Jesus Ferreira can stay fit, if he stays on the team, if he doesn't leave this winter, but like all of the reasons why you like this team in theory, that's what this win was. That's everything that they can be, and why like if the last 2 years are anything to judge by, this feels pretty comprehensively like they're going to have a really bad performance and a loss over on the weekend, because that's just what they do. They, even when they have looked good, they immediately pull the hook back.
FC Dallas, I think I went through it a little bit yesterday in the weekend recap. They have Orlando, they've got San Jose, Portland, and Sporting KC. So it's a doable schedule for this team. The max TAM number right now is what, 650 something?
Say that again?
The spending, the max player limit, the TAM limit of when you go into it is at what, 650 something?
Yeah.
FC Dallas does not pay anyone who is a defender or a defensive midfielder above that number. And like, that's the reality of this team. It is offensive that you have all those attacking pieces, and Iramendi's on $540,000, which is like a good deal for him.
That's
fine.
A great deal.
But like, that's not the point. The point is you need to invest in these positions. And Kosi Tafari, who I think is one of, the best contracts, $350,000 in the league, like at center back, that's great. You should be spending money at these positions to make your team better. Omar Gonzalez is not good enough. Marco Farfan, that's not acceptable at a center back position. And like, that's the frustration for me with this team, is like you have that talent in one half of the field and you don't have balance to this team. Do you think Peter Luchin would you keep him as coach?
I think that he would have the inside track. I think that he's done enough, and like talking to people in Dallas when this change was made, they made it clear to me that like they well and truly believe in Luchin, and that he's going to have a chance to keep this job if he performs well. And I think that he's done well enough to be among the finalists. I know that like just have coaching search on my mind. I would love to see Gio Savarese in this job.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
So I think that he should be in the mix for this as well. But like, I think if they go for Luchin, I think that that's a super defensible decision, and one that like I can't really knock. Like, I think that he's done well. It's just I'm not comfortable saying absolutely like there's no room for looking at other guys. Like, he should absolutely get it. Like, I'm at the point where it's more like it's defensible if he does, but I'd think about it.
Robin Fraser, another one that would be interesting. It's a similar stratosphere to Colorado. He wants to play possession, pretty soccer.
Yeah.
Colorado wanted to push young players. I thought he did pretty well with that. He's worked at the academy setup as well. So both of those names would be interesting in terms of the ones we already talked about. Montreal, a bounce back win. 2-0 over Chicago. If they had beaten the Revs on Wednesday night when they tied 2-2 in New England, they would currently be tied for that 9th playoff spot. They're 2 points behind Philly on equal games played. That means they have the ability to jump up on TFC as well. There is no world in which Montreal should be competitive for a playoff spot. I don't even know if we're calling the 8th and 9th spots playoff spots, so that's maybe part of why they are in this conversation and in this running, because they're not really. But it's been a good week for the CF Montreal team. Caden Clark playing well, Nathan Saliba playing well as well, Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy playing well. That's what they want this to be built on. So at least with the results, that future and those feelings come with it. We're not doing a Shield update, of course, because we've kind of decided Miami won it, but we are doing that points record update. I said to you, I thought this was a dangerous one for them. I wouldn't have started Messi and Suarez. You were right. Messi and Suarez started. They didn't get the win. They dropped the points with the James Sands headed goal in stoppage time to make it 1-1. They dropped those 2 points. They basically need to win out for them to set the record, potential still to tie the record but this was a huge result against them in terms of the opportunity, especially if you're counting that midweek Columbus game as that's points dropped.
Yeah, well, so they need results in all of the last 4 games. It has to be 3 wins and a draw. And so, again, you look at that at Columbus, I think they'd be happy to get a point. And then, so you need to win all the rest of your games. It's been very disappointing these last 2 games. Look, MLS, things happen, fixture congestion, Messi coming back from injury, you're trying to manage Busquets, you're trying to manage Suarez, Alba, all that. Look, I get it. These results happen. But this is a team that they had the inside route to holding on to to get the points record. And the way that they dropped points in these games, Atlanta, they had no business dropping the points. The game was stretched for no reason. This is a team, all of their strengths, then they subbed on Messi and Suarez in that Atlanta game. This is a team that should be killing games at the end with possession by holding the ball. Instead, they're creating defensive transition moments for no reason, and they're really bad at defensive transitions. They're playing into their weaknesses, and I do not understand it. They were going for the goal to put the game away, sure. You don't need to throw so many players forward. You don't need to have a situation where you have 4 defenders back and maybe a defensive midfielder, 40 yards of space, and then the rest of the team. I don't understand how that happens at the end of the game when you're winning with so much experience, so much talent, and so much MLS experience in this group with Tata and Gressel and you going down the list. So that was hugely disappointing. This game against NYCFC, they almost kind of brute forced their way to this. They did not play well. This is the worst game I've seen Messi play in MLS, pretty comprehensively. And that's not a worry because I think that's a one-off, and he's going to be fine because he's Lionel Messi.
Wait, can I throw out the idea that maybe if you play 3 games in a week on return from injury and you have to travel for 2 of them and one's on a baseball field and one's on turf, that maybe he won't play as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's why they didn't start him against Atlanta, but whatever. And, they drop points on a corner kick at the end of the game. These are not what dominant, historic teams do. This is why, even when they were looked in route to set this record for the points, they still seemed extremely vulnerable. You made the point. It was I do not know how they're not dropping more points. And I forget if you said that during the Atlanta game or during the NYCFC game.
I think it was during the Philly game.
Maybe you said it multiple times, but whatever it was, one of the times it was they ended up dropping the points at the end of the game, and it's these more they don't need to put these things up to chance.
Yeah,
they are good enough to kill the games off. Think of Tata's MLS Cup winning team with Atlanta. They weren't fun in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they went from a free flowing attacking team, and then they kind of dropped in for the playoffs after the Red Bulls won the Shield. They were all right, this is how we have to do. That series against the Red Bulls was super boring. But guess what? It was successful, and they were the best team, and they won MLS Cup.
There's no Michael Parkhurst. There's no Jeff Laurentowicz. There isn't even an LGP.
Jeff Laurentowicz ain't walking through that door.
Not happening. It's just not going to happen.
Kevin Kratz is not walking through that door.
He is absolutely not, because I saw him at TSD, and he's like, bro, I need to get in better shape to play in this
free
thing.
kicks.
Yeah. Mikey Ambrose not walking through that door.
Kenwin Jones ain't walking through that door.
No.
He's on the team by then.
This is Tata's problem. He's waiting for Kenwin Jones to walk through that door.
Tito Villalba ain't walking through that door.
Tito Villalba might. He might be I'll come play.
I hope he does.
I'll go play with him.
Yamil Assad is so back. His capital B back. I want Tito Villalba back.
Yamil Assad is on the supplemental roster for Cincy. I didn't look at his number when he came into the league.
I know that he wasn't great, but I felt like more teams would at least try to roll the dice. Anyway,
Yamil Assad loves Major League Soccer more than anyone we know. He couldn't get back into MLS and was like, I'm just not going to play for anyone then. How could I play for a team if it's not in Major League Soccer?
Soccer USA in the YouTube chat. Breck Shea might be interested in walking through that door.
He's probably in Florida. Let's be real.
That was 100% in Florida. Are you kidding? He gotta be. I have no knowledge. That's just right. I know.
He was on that team we talked about on the last show, which was when they beat the Revs to halt the Reds record. Breck Shea, of course.
Back-to-back Breck Shea references. We are heating our SEO players. Right?
Yeah, we absolutely are. We're killing it right now at Soccerwise. We normally do our who's out of the week, who sort of killed their chances. This is a long list this week. Tom, you want to get us started?
No, I want you to get us started.
Okay. SKC and San Jose are officially eliminated from the MLS playoffs with their losses this week. For Sporting Kansas City, I talked about it, the weather delay, all the craziness, everything like that. They are officially out. And then San Jose also officially eliminated with their result this weekend. Afterwards, they had their post-game interviews, and Jeremy Ebobisse basically laid out what most people feel from the outside, which is that it's a bit of a train wreck in San Jose. I don't know if anyone associated to it would feel any better after hearing the names connected to the coaching search that you put out today. So someone's going to have to go and ask Jeremy Ebobisse about that over the next few days. But it was not promising, as you'd expect with the season they've had with his comments post-game.
Yeah, the quote was, "Everything is a disaster, frankly. We can't talk about next year because I don't know if I'm going to be here next year. I don't know if some of the guys in the locker room will be here next year." And that's totally fair. And, like, he's clearly kind of fed up. Like, he was pretty scorching hot in that interview in terms of, like, what he said. But he said it calmly because Ebobisse's one of the smartest players in the league and one of the most mature. And he was just kind of, like, being honest and doing it pretty measured and calmly. Like, he was apologizing to the fans and stuff like, hey, the fans deserve better, we deserve better, all of this. Like, it's not good enough. Like the question that he answered was essentially like, hey, is there any positives you can take forward? You guys play, hey, I know you lost again. You're trying to come up with questions for the same game that they played 40 times this season. So, like, I don't blame the question. And Bose was like, look, we're past trying to take positives. Like, I don't care. Like, we need to pick up points. Like, it doesn't matter that we're not, like, already mathematically eliminated from playoffs. Like, when it shouldn't just be rolling over and losing every game. So it's like, we're not taking a moral victory on anything, so I don't know, man. It's, I think, frankly, a disaster was the right way to put it.
To be clear, I couldn't even remember who they lost to, and I had to go look, and they lost to St. Louis, who are also about to be eliminated from the playoffs. So this wasn't even like, we lost to a RSL team that has everything to play for and all of that type of stuff. This was just bad on bad for them. Obviously, SKC has a US Open Cup to play for, so we'll dig into that in just a moment. And then New England, 4-0 loss at Charlotte, and it has been bad for the Revs, Tom.
So their last 5 games, 4-0 loss at Charlotte. This was Charlotte's first win since July 13th. 2-2 draw versus Montreal. They had a 2-0 lead. Montreal was 13th in the East. I think at the time, whatever, they're in that jumble. They have a negative 20 goal difference in Montreal. That's a game that you have to win. 3-0 loss at Orlando. They've been playing better lately. 2-2 draw versus St. Louis, a Western Conference team who is, again, kind of nothing to play for end of the season, 13th in the West, and a 2-0 loss at Real Salt Lake. That's multiple goals in all of these games. Minimal hope is what I'd say.
I would agree with you, and it will be interesting to see how if things get shaken up in New England to change them. Caleb Porter went on the rant, I believe it was after the St. Louis game, about the referees. I don't think the referees are at fault 5 times in a row, so you have to look in the mirror
every time you drop points
at some point on that. Let's dig into a couple of the teams pushing for the playoffs, and then we'll get into our U.S. Open Cup preview. I want to talk about Philadelphia a little bit. The 4-0 win against DC United on Sunday, big result for them. They are 3-2-0 since the Leagues Cup break. The 2 losses are against Columbus and Miami, so understandable for them. Obviously, that Columbus one was the weird midweek one after they won the Leagues Cup final, so you could say they shouldn't. They've won on the road at Red Bulls, NYCFC, and then DC United.
What a murderer's row of teams that are playing great.
It is not at all, but at least it's teams that are in the playoffs or were in the playoffs when they faced off against them. So I went through, looking through the standings. There are 8 teams that have won 3 games since that Leagues Cup break. Miami, Galaxy, Columbus, Colorado, and Houston are all in there. I think you'd expect that with all those teams, right? They are all either Supporter Shield winners or top of the conference as well. The other ones are Seattle, Orlando, Minnesota, and this Philly team. Now, Seattle have won exactly 3 games. I put a asterisk in the rundown that said 1 against Sean Zawatsky and 2 wins. So you could put Seattle in this conversation if you want. I'm sure I'm just going to trigger a bunch of Seattle fans as well. I'm curious about those 4 teams, let's say them. Right, Minnesota, Philadelphia, the 2 teams right now, the last place teams in the playoffs, but playing good soccer, momentum on their side. Seattle and Orlando. Which of those teams would you trust the most to win a playoff series if I made you decide right now, not knowing the final standings?
I would say Orlando because, as I was saying earlier in the show, I think that they're going to have the easier first round matchup. Like maybe Seattle, but like look, Minnesota are going to play one of the top 2 teams in the West. And Philly are likely to play one of the top 3 teams. Oh, I think pretty mathematically starting to play one of the top 3 teams at least. And I think like Orlando, I would trust them against anybody but the top 3. And I feel the same way about Philly. So if the standings were different, I'd very easily say Philly. But reality is like they're going to go round one against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For Philadelphia, they're 5 points behind NYCFC for 7th place, and Charlotte for 6th place. They're equal on points, but they've played the same amount of games as them. So it's going to be tough for Philly to try and catch up to those teams. They finish with Atlanta, at Orlando, at Columbus, and FC Cincinnati to close. But the fascinating thing about Philly is they have turned their season around without really changing much. When you dig into the numbers, when you dig into who they were creating a ton of chances before. They're creating a ton of chances now. A lot of the numbers, interceptions, duels won, like a lot of the, are they pressing better now? Are they pressing in different places are very similar. The only two things you could really, three things that you could really find that are different. One is they're finishing. Like just straight up, they're creating the same amount of chances and they're finishing. That's a big one. Two is they are playing less in their own half. Like that is the one number that was a drastic difference when I looked through the games of the first half of the year that they were losing and the games now is they had unwanted probably a bunch of possession in their own half that doesn't lead to counter-pressing chances, that doesn't allow them to play higher up the field. It turns their mistakes into chances against them. And the last one is they were playing 5 in the back a lot. And with Damian Lowe leaving, they've not done it. They can't.
Good point.
I think it pushed another player higher up the field, which gives them another player to press high and counter-press high and all those types of things. And those players have performed. Quinn Sullivan's been phenomenal. I think Leon Flock's been really, really good in this team. He would probably be my starter if you made me choose 1-6 of the two options right now for Philadelphia. Gazdag has turned his game back on and has been really dangerous. And the forward options have been good. Obviously, you talk about Ty Baribo, but Ura's scoring goals, and Sam Adeniran's been a good addition to this group.
Yeah, I really like that trio. Like, if at any point you have to have two of those on the field, I really like that. And that's not something I would have forecasted 3 months ago. Like, when Julian Carranza was leaving, it was like, all right, like, this team is creating chances, but they're already not scoring, and they're losing their only consistent finisher, or the only person that I think we all trust to score a representative sample size of goals, right? Like, instead, Baribo's been incredible. Mikel Ura has fit better with Baribo than I expected. I really like that. And Sam Adeniran was born to play Philadelphia Union Soccer. Like, are you kidding me? I hope that he stays just because I think this is a perfect fit, but we'll see what happens at the end of the season when his contract is up. But yeah, to your point with Philly, they are 5th in MLS in expected goal difference, plus 10.2. That is aligned with their plus 10 goal difference. Like, if you look at specifically expected goals versus goals and expected goals against versus goals against, it's all aligned. That's why it was so, like, how many episodes did we do about, like, I think it just kind of comes down to finishing and goalkeeping. And that's really
and Andre
been the
Blake
big change.
being healthy the second half of the year is big as well. Came back this weekend.
That's been the biggest change for me. And like you said, I was trying to look at the numbers too. Like, Jeff Ruder of The Athletic, he has, like, style metrics that I really like. So thank you to Jeff for these numbers. They are 2nd in long pass share in MLS, how often you pass the ball direct or long. 4th in shots, 7th in attack speed, 10th in passes per defensive actions, and 13th in shots conceded. Like, this is aligned with what they've been like every other year. And when all of these underlying numbers are saying the same things, their form has finally caught up. And usually over a season or over multiple seasons, this is what happens. And I think that's as simple as the answer. It's they are who we thought they are. And the finishing and the goalkeeping caught up.
And this is where I go back to the, like, I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs, or I trust them, even though we're not quite sure of the matchup, because this is real. Where Minnesota, it's new, you don't know what it is, right? Yeboah's never been in the playoffs. Like, all these pieces are coming together for the first time. And some of these other teams we're talking about, they're hot. Hot is different than who your identity is. This is Philly's identity. I'm not saying it's enough to beat a Miami or a Columbus or a Cincinnati in a playoff series, but at least it's something that they can lean on, and you don't have to throw a gimmick out there to try and win a playoff game. So Philadelphia, it's really interesting to watch them, and obviously we'll continue to keep an eye on them as they go down this playoff stretch. Let's talk our first final of the weekend, or of the week, Wednesday night, US Open Cup final. LAFC hosting Sporting Kansas City, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. This is going to be their second match of the year. They face off in March, and then they play again in 2 weeks, which is the odds that two Western Conference teams face off in an Open Cup final and haven't played again for the rest of the season are pretty low. And that's what we got in this one. LAFC are 4-0-2 in the last 6 head-to-head matches between these two teams. So SKC have had no success since 2021 against this club, but they are respectably a 2-3-2 at BMO in LA, which makes no sense, but that is over the history of LAFC since they came into the league. This is a bizarre matchup, I have to say, in an Open Cup final.
Yes. Can I take it a step back before we get into LAFC versus Kansas City? Because I think the biggest story, I think the biggest talking point, and most important, is what the Open Cup is this year and what the future of the Open Cup is.
Okay.
Aaron Long was quoted this week pretty much saying, as an American, like, I really care about this. Like, I want this to be normal again. I want all teams, like, he was
Hollingshead as well was in that conversation.
And so for me, like, that's what I'm looking at right now. Like, the spotlight's on this, and like, it's I think it's a really bad look for Major League Soccer that it just so happened Campion Cup and the US Open Cup are on the same night. I think that's really stark when you're looking at it, and I think pretty bad in terms of optics. And again, when the league is complaining about fixture congestion, and that's part of the reason why we can't put our teams in Open Cup, when they're creating new competitions, when they're expanding the playoffs seemingly every year, and not just expanding the number of teams, expanding the number of games with the round one is what it is. Like, you got to look at it, like, we're all trying to find out whose fault this is, right? Like, for the fixture congestion. So I don't love that argument. And again, like, I think that the momentum for the Open Cup that has happened, I think it needs to be at crescendo tomorrow. I think that fans need to be heard tomorrow in this final because, again, trophies are what we do all of this for. So I even feel silly not starting with one of these two teams have a chance to win the trophy. But for me, it's the bigger picture at looking at what is going to happen to the Open Cup moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I am someone who's a huge fan of the U.S. Open Cup, and I want it to exist the way it did exist. I want every club to get a chance to play against these big giants. I love the David and Goliath. I think the idea of having like a giant bracket is something you can pitch to fans and Americans and be like, look at this cool thing. You like March Madness? What if the people who you work with can play against World Cup players and like genuinely have those opportunities? I wonder, though, if SKC making the final, playing 3 of 4 against lower division teams and being a terrible MLS team, in some way is poor for that argument because you're going to have people in an office somewhere and owners at a table say, like, why are we going to add more teams to this? Like, the teams we had won is the same as our teams playing against each other in the league. I'm not saying that that's an argument that I would make, and I'm not saying it's a good one. But in terms of, like, what do we think the future is, and we can make this a Soccerwise episode. We can go out and we can talk to some people and try and get together and try and find a solution for what the future of the U.S. Open Cup is. But I don't know if that's a bad thing for the future of the tournament, that the fact that – so SKC, they only played FC Dallas as an MLS team. Otherwise, they played Union Omaha, they played FC Tulsa, and they played Indy 11. They are a bad MLS team, and they won all those games. I just don't know that that's going to come out in the argument in the end for the decision makers as being a good thing.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way to frame it, and I appreciate it so that you don't get taken out of context, that you're like, this isn't an argument I'd make, but like you said, like, it's kind of what the people in the C-suites are saying, like, from owners to Don Garber and the top leadership at MLS HQ. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
And for me, I would say SKC playing for a trophy in what is otherwise a lost and frustrating season is a good thing. Is part of it, like, oh, hey, look, like, there are more ways for a season to be successful than just this, and MLS could quickly counter and say the Leagues Cup, and I would agree with that. I think that there's room on the calendar for both of these tournaments, and I like both of these tournaments. Like, I did the anonymous GM survey in February or March, and overwhelmingly, all the CSOs said, yeah, we want to be, and it's like, even the ones who were like, if it were up to me, probably not, because the juice isn't worth the squeeze because of, hey, we have Champions League, all this, whatever, right? But he's like, even my personal opinion aside, I know the people here want it, and that's good enough for me. Like, I don't care, right? Like, so we would ask the CSOs, hey, what does your owner want it? And a lot of them were like, I don't know, or like whatever kind of thing. But like, it was at the worst lukewarm, but like, it wasn't like a lot of people being like, oh no, this was a great decision. And I've had sources say that, hey, we kind of needed to make this statement to ensure that it's going to improve in the future, but I just don't trust them that, like, if they don't get what they want, like, or even if they do, has they kind of already moved the ship? All right, we ripped off the Band-Aid, like, screw it, let's move forward.
There
I really
are-
hope not. I really hope not.
There is a lot of argument that makes financial sense and makes business
Yeah, I get
sense
it.
for not doing it. It's a sport. It is
Yeah.
not a perfect business. It never will be. It never should be. Fans are not exactly customers. Like, none of that is a fair comparison. I also would say there's a lot of space that I think all fans in the U.S. have given to people that have been running soccer in this country to say, okay, you're trying to do something new. Like, we're going to give you latitude in this. We're going to have respect for allowing you to do things, right? The fact that we talk about these games when, yes, LAFC are not the best club in the world, but like, we like our soccer. So we watch it and we go to it and we root for it and all those types of things. You have that same responsibility to build the game in the region. And like, part of that is having an open cup and having the opportunity for more clubs, larger clubs. You're never going to have an MLS team in every market. You shouldn't. Like, that's not the way the country is built. That's not
You don't
the
want
way
60 teams?
Yeah, well, it's not the population centers. I mean, I would go to the Mobile, Alabama games, just like sit out on the water and see the vibes, but may not be always the best opportunity. And this is the way you build the game and have enough touch points to have enough players to come up and become passionate about it or become players and all of that type of stuff. So I agree with you on that note. And like, of course, every CSO is going to say they want it because this is the example. Peter Vermees can go into his exit interview at the end of this year and be like, we're in CONCACAF. Well, they're already in CONCACAF, and we won a trophy. And they have the opportunity to be the first MLS team to win it win it 5 times, and to tie Maccabi Los Angeles and Bethlehem Steel as all-time number 1. So like, but that's the history you're talking about that you have to be a part of. You cannot be quarter in or halfway in. For SKC, they haven't been. Like, under Peter Vermees, they have taken this competition seriously. This is going to be their 3rd final under Peter Vermees as a coach. Obviously, they're 5th overall. They are 4-0 in their final, so they're pretty good in here. And they're officially eliminated from the playoffs. You've got nothing to hold back for. Like, this is it.
We got 4-0 in finals. Or, sorry, 4-0 in finals. And we have Steve Toronto who's lost 3 or 4 finals in a row, depending on where you put the Campion Cup in that discussion.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Bit of a bizarre quote yesterday. I'm just going to be honest and deliver it that way. It was a fair question of something to the effect of, hey, you've lost several finals in a row. Is there, the mental hurdle? Is there any weight that comes to that? And he was more or less like, I don't think this is a new game. I don't think anything matters, what happened even this weekend. Or I went to the grocery store yesterday. It doesn't matter what I did or didn't get at the grocery store. And I was like, wow, that was quickly went off the rails there. But like when he kind of got the train back on the tracks, it's a completely different game, different opponent, different time of year, different roster. It's unfair to draw a comparison, and it makes no sense to me to even talk about past finals. That does not instill much confidence in me, Gus.
It doesn't, but let me say this. The LAFC we have seen over the last year has played on the road against the best teams in the region in their finals. They are hosting SKC. So this game is a whole new ballgame.
Yep, I agree, but I think that it's absolutely a fair storyline to be like, hey, you've lost 3 or 4 of these in a row.
Yeah.
And as you say, they're favorites. This is going to be a borderline disaster if they don't win. Honestly.
It will be very, very tough for them. They are winless in 5 straight MLS matches since Leagues Cup. Their last win was in the US Open Cup semifinal back on August 28th. So it will be almost a full month between victories when they take the field for this game. At the same time, they were coming off that Leagues Cup final loss. They went to Seattle midweek off the back of a Sunday night final loss, and they went and they clearly deserved to win that game against Seattle. They did at Starfire. Like, it was not an easy performance or an easy moment, but now they come back and they have to be the better team at home. Like as you said, this would be a disaster if they lose this. There's a few question marks in these two teams from a lineup point of view. I think for LAFC, one is you've played a back 5 your last 2 finals against Columbus. This isn't Columbus on the road. I would be surprised, especially with Murillo's injury, if they did so once again. My expectation is it's Chanot and Long. Then in the midfield, I think the key for LAFC is you have to be able to attack in transition. That is your advantage over Sporting KC. Even if SKC tries to eliminate that, they're incapable of doing it. My guess then is either Tillman or Bogusz starts, and probably it's Tillman with Bogusz on the wing in that spot to take advantage of that. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was Lewis O'Brien as well, alongside Ilie. If not, it's probably Atuesta and Ilie with Tillman in front of them.
I'm going to steal from the chat here. Soccer USA saying, I have a feeling that LAFC's David Martinez is going to be a spark that this team needs. I'm using this as a conduit just to say a non sequitur of, I really like Martinez.
He's awesome. Yeah.
I wish that there was a better pathway to him getting minutes, which even with Carlos Vela, there's another player in the attack to choose from. And that's kind of the work. Like, I find it fascinating. If you're a sporting director, what you say is it's the head coach's job. I try to give him as many good players as possible. But this team being at the crossroads of Olivier Giroud, hopefully Antoine Griezmann, Carlos Vela, you start to name guys like that. But then also at their roots was teenager Diego Rossi coming through. Edward Atuesta as a young player coming through, right? Like, not necessarily like obviously any academy graduates in that conversation, but like a guy like David Martinez, the best talent, that teenage talent to come out of the Venezuelan league. People who have more expertise on the Venezuelan league have told me they have multiple decades. Like, this is the brightest young talent that we've seen. And I really hope that he can find a way to get more minutes. It's not easy with Kike Olivera, with Mateusz Bogusz, with Vela coming back, with everything else. But I think that Toronto has to find a way to get this kid minutes.
David Martinez is one of those players where I watch him and it's like, I could probably finagle a 22nd spot on a 22 under 22 list for him just because I like watching him play and I want him to be good and like he's a fun one but that's pure potential. My guess is Kike Olivera and Bogusz, at least one of them's not on this roster next year, and David Martinez the long-term replacement to those minutes. Whether Griezmann comes in or not, you need, like LAFC have shown, you need to cover games, right? Yes, if they're going to make multiple finals, there is minutes to be had there. They just weren't there this year.
So I agree with that, and I think that's correct. And again, that's why you try to have as many good players as possible. But dude, it's a new era in across all sports and across of how much player movement there is, bro. John Duran was trying to force his way out of Chicago halfway through his first season there because he was like, "Why aren't I playing more?" It's like, bro, you just turned 18, you just got here.
He's like, I'm a Premier League striker, though.
Yeah, and like, so again, I'm not saying David Martinez. Yeah, yes, he is. I'm not saying David Martinez is showing any malcontent. I have no information. I'm not, but I'm just saying that, like, this is your player pathway. If you're David Martinez, part of you is thinking, like, you could be, again, I'm saying all of this in hypothetical. You'd be like, you know what, man, like, I would have been playing every single minute for his club in Venezuela. Or maybe if I went to a Brazilian club, would I be playing more? If I went to a different MLS club, would I be playing more? What's going to happen when Griezmann comes here, right? Like, these are questions that players ask their agents and agents ask the clubs and everything else. So, I find that fascinating. How do you find the line of we're trying to win now and we're trying to get as many good players as possible, but also that, like, so now the next time that they go to South America and it's like, hey, I can point to, you point to Diego Rossi in the past, and now it's like, well, Stipe Buke came and went really quickly. Some other, like, again, maybe David Martinez didn't get enough playing time. You kind of going down the list, and maybe if you're a player that has multiple options, are you like, am I going to play here enough minutes for me to develop?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, your hope would be you're in the group saying, look at Mateusz Bogusz, right? He's probably going to play 1,000 more minutes this season than he did last year. We can develop you. Rossi, we did the same with, although Rossi was a starter day one because he was a DP. But they helped develop him, sold him, did right by him in his career. That's sort of the argument you would make to those young players. I don't think David Martinez will get a ton of play in this game with as many veteran options as this team has and the pieces they have. It'll be interesting if Kai Kamara gets any, like against SKC in a U.S. Open Cup final. It would be, and at 40 years old, like, it would be wild.
One thing I'm going to try to speak into existence is if Kai Kamara plays and scores, that he does, I hope it's at the opposite end of the Kansas City traveling fans, and Kai Kamara pulls an Emmanuel Adebayor.
Stop, he would never.
I know, like, he's too good of a dude.
He's literally hard hands. Yeah, his celebration is wild.
But I can still wish. Can still wish.
You can absolutely wish that if you want. Ilie Sanchez also, right? A huge piece of Peter Vermees's SKC teams. He started in the last final that they won. So this now 2017 U.S. Open Cup final is Sporting's. It's not just their last trophy. It's their last final. For a team that we always mention as one of the most consistent, strongest, all of that, you're talking 8 years between finals, where the span before was what, 4 finals in a 5-year span across Open Cup and MLS Cup for this team.
Deep playoff runs.
It has been a whole different reality, and yet this can change a lot. To paint the wall one more time, to be the first MLS club to 5, to tie the record from 2 great names that we talk about over and over again in U.S. soccer history, and whatever happens with the Open Cup in the future, like this on the flip side could be the last chance. We don't know if there'll even be an MLS team going forward, and Sporting Kansas City would have the chance to be first walking out of it. I don't think that will happen, but like that's sort of what's on the line, and yet I can't really see them win this game. We are talking about a team that has Johnny Russell and Alan Pulido and Eric Tommy and like all these pieces. Tim Melia, who's the guy you want in goal on a penalty kick shootout.
Yeah.
I can't see them get across the line. The formula is that attacking excellence gets you a lead, and you are able to force LAFC to open their lines up more, to play more in possession, and then you're able to hit them on the counter. I think Daniel Shalhoub is a question mark as a starter. He helps you in a spot like that. I don't know if Eric Tommy's a starter in this game. If Jake Davis is playing in central midfield, it's a numbers game at some point. If Agata is starting, I think Alan Pulido has to be on the field from the start in this game. So my assumption is it's the 2 of them with Pulido, quote unquote, as the 10 behind him, just to have more finishers, because that's been their biggest problem. And so there's a numbers game in there in which what I'm saying is I think SKC has 1 or 2 good subs in the attack on the field, but they have to play from a lead. If they are chasing in this game, they will get gashed in transition the other way, no matter who the center backs are, and that's the big fear for them.
Yeah, so I think to your point, I think that they have a genuine chance, particularly with the form that LAFC have been coming in, particularly with their performances in recent finals. And again, as I've said on the show, I'm not going to knock them for losing finals at Columbus or losing a CONCACAF Champions League final. This one I will, right? And like I think whether Cherundolo wants to downplay it and say, well, I don't even know why this is a question, more or less, like I think that's part of it. But for me, I do not see a way around LAFC not lifting this trophy.
Yeah, and if they do not, it is going to be a tough Thursday for this club. And the question marks about what they need to do to get over the line. They brought in Olivier Giroud like this. These were the moments it was for. Yes. To replace what Chicho gave them at MLS Cup 2 years ago, and to be able to have that finisher.
If I think we're about to transition, but are you worried at any point right now about Olivier Giroud's fit and early performances with this club?
Not really. I'm surprised it's been slow because his game seems very simple of like he's a good box finisher. Yeah. Chances are chances anywhere around the world. And he's so talented. So I'm surprised it's been this slow. But the fact that you had a Leagues Cup run straight into league play, into an Open Cup semi, into an Open Cup final, it is up and down enough for you to convince me that he just hasn't really had the chance to settle in. And by the time you reach MLS Cup playoffs, it'll be fine. Like, I'm going to trust this club who have done this before and this player who has done this before in a way that I wouldn't for some other clubs in MLS.
That's fair. I'm surprised as well, and that's why I'm a little bit worried, just because I thought this was going to be much easier and much more seamless. Yeah. And the immediacy of what I thought he was going to bring to this team, and I have not seen it yet. I still think this is going to be a very good signing, but I can't lie to you and say that I'm not worried.
Let's talk Canadian Championship as well. A big opportunity for these two clubs. Vancouver hosting 10 p.m. Eastern time is this kickoff, so you get a pretty good Wednesday. Campiones Cup into this match, and then halfway through this match, you get the start of the U.S. Open Cup final. BC Place, this is now the third straight year it hosts the Canadian Championship. Vancouver has won 2 of them. It is electric for games like this. The crowd comes out, they get the support, and they are fun to watch. So going for the third straight for this team, they've only won this 3 times. So, like, this is a big moment for this team. And while it starts to feel like, okay, let's take a step forward. And we talked about Vancouver a few weeks ago, I think, of like, okay, you make the playoffs, you don't win, you win the Canadian Championship. We've seen it before. That doesn't change the fact that at this point, it is everything for your season. And you are heavy favorites against a TFC team that is struggling, a TFC team that went to Colorado after playing midweek, rotated their team 8 players, lost, stayed in Colorado, and then came into Vancouver. Like, you've got everything going for you as a pretty healthy Whitecaps team right now who has a clear identity of who you are. This is a big chance for Vanni Sartini, I think, to protect his space, to keep the club consistent, right? You keep things level. You win this, you can go into the playoffs confident. You're playing with house money once again, and that's the best space to be in.
Yeah, so for me, in terms of health, I'm firmly expecting Brian White to be able to start this game, just based on what I've heard. Again, I don't know if he 100% is or isn't, but I'm pretty heavily assuming that he will. So to your point, they should have everybody. Armstrong should be available as well. Maybe not starting, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised either. So, yeah, to your point, at home, playing a struggling Toronto team in a final, no excuses, get it done. And this would be an awesome campaign for Vancouver to win this trophy again, to go into the playoffs with this momentum, to go into the playoffs, bringing in Stuart Armstrong and getting him into the team, hopefully where he'll be ready to be playing 90 minutes very soon. And then, again, I would disagree with the house money point, though, Gus. If they get bounced in the first round, I think that's going to be a huge disappointment. And maybe not disappointment, but a frustration because, but then what's the point? What is the next move for this team to get better if it's not this year? Honest God.
It's not that it's not this year. I think what they've built has a level of sustainability in the age of a lot of these players, in where they're at in their careers. I don't think Andres Kubas walks through that door and is like, I need to go to Turkey tomorrow and play in Champions League.
Yeah.
So that I just think you have the ability to be a consistent team. And then, like I talked about the Stuart Armstrong, can you find a Lucho type deal, which is you have an opening that other teams don't have in a moment and you get a good deal? And Stuart Armstrong might be that guy. I'm not sure. But I think that's where you exist as a team. And also they've done pretty well with some player development, right? They get the Ali Ahmeds of the world. I think Levante Johnson could be another one of those. And can you get one that's so special that they elevate you to a higher level? I would say if they are uncompetitive, that's different than losing. If they are the lower seed and they go to 3 games and they win their home game and they go toe-to-toe with a Galaxy, well, probably not the Galaxy in the first round, but an RSL or an LAFC, I think that's a different conversation, but you need to win this to do that. And they should dictate the tempo of this game. The only thing I want to see from Vancouver is come out and play the style you play, in which you make the game hectic and you trust that you can open the game up. Because sometimes when Vancouver likes to sit into a deeper block or like to keep their numbers smaller, they eliminate the chances they create and they make the game slower. And I don't think it goes in their favor in a game like this, even though you have the individual talent of Oso and Bernadeschi and Insigne on the other side against you. For TFC, they're in a bit of a tailspin towards the end of the season. I would be surprised if they make the playoffs, quite honestly, with the way they've been playing and with what we've seen from them. But they've got match winners, right? They've got they've got the 2 best players on the field in this game. They didn't start Bernadeschi in the midweek.
Oh, disrespect.
Nice. Working man's MVP?
I'm not saying that as a bid. I'm saying that if would draft right now players in this game. I go first, Ryan Gauld. You can go back-to-back, taking Insigne and Bernadeschi. I'm taking Brian White.
So, didn't expect this energy. Love it. Appreciate it. I'll take an L on that in some way. The other is...
Oh, in some way. Not a full L.
Ryan Gauld's 27. Do I get 27-year-old Lorenzo Insigne?
No, you get him right now in this game.
Okay, but then I'm saying...
Do you want a time machine? What's going on?
Well, when you say the question soccer player, it doesn't always mean in this exact moment. It means pedigree as well.
We're previewing a final. What else would we be doing?
We're previewing a final. You spent 7 minutes talking about David Martinez. Do not act like I can't move away from the exact moment for a second to talk about things. Oh, man, Tom. Are you picking Vancouver in this one?
Yes.
Are you picking LAFC in the other one?
Yeah, I know that's boring, particularly when you stack it back-to-back like that. I wish that I was being more inventive right now. I just don't see it.
The only thing to note, by the way, for the Canadian Championship is I always wish I had this in my head, but there is a limit to non-Canadian players available and have to be on the field. It does shift lineups a little bit for teams. So keep an eye out for that of you can't always have the perfect best 11 available in this competition. For TFC, it's a huge chance. You said it, for Herdman, it's better than it's been. Winning this, getting back into CONCACAF, that would be a good season for them as well and would take off some of the pressure towards this playoff race for them to maybe be able to solidify their spot. I just don't see this back line holding up against the options that Vancouver has. Vancouver spreads you wide, and they're really good at making the runs in between your lines there. and then creating chances. And this Toronto team does not track very well in those moments, and they do not scramble very well because, for the most part, they're normally carrying at least two players on the field who are not defending their position, especially if Bernadeschi plays as a wingback in this game. So you need, similar to SKC, you need your attack to be efficient and be dangerous enough going forward. Last one, Campiones Cup. Any juice, any energy for it? I wrote down on the rundown, good teams are fun, and it's fun to watch good teams play, and like that's kind of the most.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. And like, again, particularly given it's coming the night of the US Open Cup and the Canadian Championship. Those two get priority for me. Like, if this was, I mean, I understand you can't find more dates, particularly right now, at where we are this season, to try to figure out when it could work for Columbus and Club America to play this game. If it was its own night, I think we would be talking about this more, but it is what it is. I'm watching the Open Cup and Canadian Championship over this. I hope that Club America and Columbus take it seriously. I guess I would understand why not, given all the fixture congestion and everything coming up. But if they do, it'll be a super fun game. But I'm a little bit dubious.
We talked big picture US Open Cup, so big picture here, just a thing that popped in my head in this game coming. One is the fact that Columbus is the best team in the region is awesome. Like, if you told me these things were going to happen 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you, and it would have made me so happy. Like, I used to argue that Seattle team was the best in the region, that Obafemi Martins was the best player in the hemisphere, and no one would listen to me. And the other is that this Club America team is like kind of MLS-y American, right? Brian Rodriguez starts, Zendejas starts in this team.
Dude, I love that. Yep.
Another thing that you wouldn't have imagined could have been a future going forward. And now it's like, of course, no brainer. Maybe they'll bring in 2 or 3 more former MLS players. And you're like this, and it's not just like, oh, it's a down team. This is an all-time great, also Jonathan Dos Santos, but this is like an all-time great Club America team over the last 16 months. And you have Brian Rodriguez at the center of it, Zendejas at the center of it as well, and Jonah Dos Santos. It's just really cool. I think this will be a fun game because Columbus don't play boring games. And so it's a fine appetizer, but you better believe that if for some reason, I don't know, it runs over, I don't even know how it would end, if it goes straight to PKs or not, you better believe I've got Canadian Championship on the moment that game starts.
Whoever has better business KPIs and social media impression rate, I think that's how they would do the tiebreaker. Whoever brought in more sponsors, I think that's who wins. Is
Tom
what happens in a game
zippered
like
up his tracksuit and said, "Game's gone, mate. Game is gone." As I mentioned, we're shifting the mailbag. So it'll be on Friday now. So you've got time to get it into the Discord in the mailbag chat. If you are not a subscriber, subscribe to Patreon. That gets you access to the Discord. I promise you it's going to be electric on Wednesday night. Everyone watching the games, talking, hanging out. It's a really fun place to be. It also gets you our depth chart and our salary cap tables, which I've been referencing a ton over the course of this show. We've already got a first question here that we're going to put into the Thursday show from Webhead, who says straight vibes best 11. And so we're gonna get into the vibes, underlying stats, and underlying numbers here, so that we can get ready for that one and be ready to roll on Thursday. We will recap, of course, the 3 finals on Thursday. It is going to be such a fun show to put together. We will preview the weekend as well as the playoff race continues. I've got NWSL content for you coming up tomorrow with Jordan Angeli. And of course, you can listen to all our podcasts to go back and listen to everything else. Thank you to you, Tom, for being here. Shout out to the chat for being on fire all day here today. Thank you to all of you for listening, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.